Women in Wellness Tribe. It's Dr. Sonia Jensen here with Dr. Caitlin Sazowski. So we have a great show for you today, and it's something that Dr. Caitlin and I and Dr. Mindy, we talk to about a lot. It's how do we prepare our body for pregnancy? And I think that's a big question on a lot of couples' minds when they, as soon as, they realize, okay, it's time, we're ready for this, and we want to get pregnant, we want to start a family, and it's almost like go time. But what we educate our couples on is that you really want to give us time and yourself time and your body time to figure out what your body needs to create a foundation. So I'm a mom of two, and I know what pregnancy can do to us. They are little parasites that will deplete you to the max. So you really want to go into these stages like fully prepared and fully educated on what you need for you, because you need to be healthy and holy. So maybe Dr. Caitlin, you can kind of start off on some of the suggestions that you have, and how long before someone wants to become pregnant would you like to see them in your office?
Ooh, so most women, they're probably very much like all of us when we decide we want something, we want it now. We don't want to postpone, we don't want to wait. And the problem is these days with how toxic we are, we really should postpone trying to get pregnant for 6 months. So like you, I'm sure you'll agree pretty close. I need a minimum 6 months. And the reason I do is because during pregnancy, that's when we're shedding a lot of toxins.
Mhm.
So the toxins that we're releasing and that our now baby is going to start to absorb are mercury and lead. And that is not something you want to pass on or pass down. Plus, those can be things that are that can make it difficult for you to become pregnant in the first place.
Mm.
So one of the first things that I want to have people do, especially young women, is to detox, especially since most women too have been on years and years and years of birth control.
Mhm.
So it's really important to start rebalancing and removing and detoxing their system. What do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. 6 months minimum. If you can give me a year, fantastic. And also a reminder that it's not just the woman in the picture here, it's the
Hmm.
partner as well, right? So the two of you are coming together to create this little being. So the two of you need to work together on this detox process. There was actually a study that I read a long time ago now, and they were looking at the health of grandsons compared to their grandfathers, and how depending on the grandfather's health and puberty, it determined like nutritional status in the grandson. And I can't remember what the parameters were, but I just remember reading and thinking, oh my goodness, these generational toxicities and things. It's not just coming from mom. I mean, yes, because we're creating the placenta, and especially things like heavy metals are in our tissues and in our bones, so things are crossing through the placenta. That's huge. But the sperm carries a lot of its own story, right? So
Hmm.
I would say, yeah, 6 months minimum, and if you can, do a year. So what do you start with? Like when they come and say somebody comes into you 6 months in advance, what's the first thing that you would do with that couple?
I'd actually run some basic labs to see, okay, where are we at? How are things looking? So starting and looking at both hormones for both men and females. So I might look and do a spot blood test just to get a snapshot and an idea. Depending on if there's any other symptoms, I may do saliva, but I think the Dutch test is really the way to go these days
Yeah,
to figure out exactly what is happening for both male and female counterparts.
yeah.
So that's what I would start with. And there's a very good chance that I may or may not do a urine toxic challenge test to
Mhm.
find out what kind of heavy metals does this person have in their system, especially if they've ever had or their mother had silver fillings while they were pregnant with them.
Yeah.
So those would be the couple tests that I would start off with, and I'd also look and see homocysteine. So I'm not huge into testing for MTHFR mutations.
Hmm.
They're out there. Some people are affected, some people aren't. But whether you have it or not, it really is dependent on how well your body is methylating.
Hmm.
So homocysteine is a great way to get a good idea of how is your body methylating.
Right.
So That's where I would start. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I would do a Dutch test and look at the hormones. I would also include blood work for the thyroid to see how that's going. There's another test by some company called SpectraCell that actually looks at your nutritional status on your red blood cells. So that's another one that I really like to run just to see if there's any deficiencies. You know, when you're pregnant, there's a lot of change in your nutritional status. So one of them being your zinc drops quite drastically. So I want to see what your zinc storage is like beforehand and what it's going to be like during the pregnancy, because at the moment of birth, what happens is the colostrum that we get is really high in zinc to help the baby's nervous system calm down. So if we're going into the pregnancy already depleted, it's going to be really challenging for that whole process to happen. So it's all preventative, right? So we try to look at those. And like you, Dr. Caitlin, I'll do a heavy metal test because of that generational toxicity. And even going further than even the silver fillings. I mean, if you're eating fish, right, you're going to have some there. If you've had vaccinations in the past, you're going to have some mercury in your system. It can come in
What
many
you
different
cook
forms.
with.
What you cook with, yeah, there's so many different things to look at there. So those are kind of the basics, what I would do right when they come in. And then my bigger question is always like, why do you want to become a parent? You know, I think that emotional piece is really important when embarking on this journey and creating a scenario where these couples can ask each other these challenging questions of like, what is it, something that you think you're supposed to do, or is it something that you're really longing for and feel it's the next step in your relationship? Like really planting a seed there so we can start working on that too while we're trying
That's
to
a
get
Yeah, that's amazing. Not too many people know this, but
mm-hmm.
I actually didn't want kids before. I was never interested in having kids. Some people might say I'm selfish because, my focus was me and
Well, Dr.
my husband.
Shafali would say that's the opposite, that having kids is actually the most selfish thing that you could do.
And my husband actually didn't want kids either. He actually didn't think he'd ever get married, let alone have kids. And so
Mm,
um, it's kind of interesting how things can change depending on, where you are in your life and what you're looking for. And so that's a great question that people should ask themselves. Like, what is the reason that you're wanting kids? Is it because you feel morally obligated? You're getting pressure from your family? People are telling you that it's selfish of you not to have kids, or whatever it may
right.
be.
Yeah.
It should be for the right reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we've talked in our other podcasts about hormones and how they're affected by our belief system, our mindset, and how we feel
Mhm.
about ourselves. So if we're having this internal struggle of trying to go down this path of getting our body ready for pregnancy, but yet we haven't resolved whether that's something we really want, it's going to create an internal conflict, which may make it more challenging. So that's something to really, yeah, tune into.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. That's a great thing for everybody out there to
Yeah.
sit down and have a conversation with their significant other as to, okay, are we really ready for this? Is this something we really want and why we want it? So awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna look into that SpectraCell. I haven't heard of that test before. So
Oh, yeah,
that's
it's a good
super
one.
cool.
Mm.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
So, looking for some of those deficiencies,
Hmm.
it's super important that women are taking the proper supplementation beforehand to really support their body's function, not to mention to support the ability to grow, a little baby. And so, what are some of the things that you look for? Are
Mhm.
all prenatal vitamins good, or what would you recommend?
So, yeah, good question. So, you know, you look at the history, right? And most women, before they get pregnant, are usually on birth control. So then you look at that status when it comes to their nutrition. So if you've been on birth control, most likely you're going to be really deficient in B vitamins, magnesium, zinc. So a few of these key factors that we need for a healthy pregnancy. So when I'm looking at a prenatal, I mean, I'm not really a big fan of multivitamins, to be honest. I like targeted therapy, but you know, I think it's there's a subconscious thing or it's just comfort thing for a lot of pregnant women to kind of take that prenatal, so they feel like they're, you know, covering their ground, which is important. But what I look for is how much of everything is in there, what fillers are there. There is one prenatal out there, and I'm just going to say the name. It's called Materna. up here in Canada. I don't know if the US has it or not.
Hmm.
But when I grabbed it and looked at the fillers, the list was this long. So for those of you that aren't watching and just listening, it was long. Like there were so many fillers to the point where there was sodium lauryl sulfate in there.
Ugh.
So, and this is what women are taking. So when I look at prenatals, maybe 2 or 3 fillers just to help encapsulate the formula. And you want to make sure you're getting all the methylated forms for folic acid and also for B12 so that you're
Mm-hmm.
actually absorbing. So in saying that, Dr. Caitlin, maybe you can talk a little bit about methylation because you touched on it with the gene. And yeah, if you want to just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so a lot of women and men out there are having problems with methylating. And the reason that it's becoming more problematic is most multi supplements, like prenatals or just a multivitamin, that's actually the word I was looking for,
Mhm.
they use synthetic forms of folic acid and, the bees. And the problem with that is our body can't actually utilize it, turn it into the form that we use.
Mhm.
And so it's really triggering and causing a lot more harm and damage for these individuals than it is good.
Mhm.
And so, just like you said, making sure that you're going in and doing the methylated form of folic acid is L5 methyl tetrahydrofolate.
There you go.
So, for all of you out there that really want to know, that's
Mhm.
what you want to look for.
Yeah.
And then the other one, so B12, like Dr. Sonia said, is methylcobalamin.
Mhm.
And you have to make sure that it's those two forms because otherwise your body's just not utilizing it. And most supplements out there don't use the methylated forms. Have you
Yeah.
noticed that?
Yeah, I do feel like it's changing. A lot of the professional brands, I think, are using the methylated form, and
Mm-hmm.
the other brands still haven't really caught on yet. And from what I understand, too, most of the studies have been done on just the folic acid, the synthetic kind. So I think there might be some fear around putting the methylated form into the prenatals. But like Dr. Caitlin said, even if you have the synthetic form in there, your body will not be using it. It's not going to utilize it as we need. And the reason why we need extra folic acid is to prevent spina bifida in the child. And with our diet, and you also want to look at your nutritional status when it comes to diet. If you're getting all the greens in, if you have healthy digestion, then you are getting forms of folic acid in your diet. But most women that come to us aren't really there yet. And most, I would say over 90%, have some sort of digestive upset, so they're not absorbing things from their food. So that's why that methylated form is so important.
Right. And the unfortunate, well, let's talk about food.
Yeah,
Let's
let's
go
talk about food.
into what are some of the things that we should do switching what we may currently be doing to what we should be doing to
Mhm.
prepare our body for pregnancy? Like, what are some of the easy, quick fixes or
Yeah.
solutions that you recommend right off the bat?
Yeah. So right away, organic. If you're not already there, you want to do organic, whole foods, right? The simple stuff that we've talked about before. And, I think it's really similar to what we would say to any patient that comes in, the low grains, the higher fats, making sure that your digestion is working, right? So, you're looking at your bowel movements, you're looking at your peristalsis, how everything is going, and gluten-free, right?
Yeah.
The glyphosate, non-GMO, kind of the basics that we talk about.
Yeah, those are all some great tips. I always tell people to make sure you start to up and increase your cruciferous vegetables,
Mm,
like your greens. So whether it be kale or chard or cauliflower, Brussels
broccoli.
sprouts, those kinds of things. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, because they're so, so, so good at helping um, keeping your gut healthy and moving, but also absorbing the zinc and the magnesium and the other things that we
Yeah.
become deficient in during pregnancy.
Right. And another thing that happens in pregnancy is that your thyroid slows down, right?
Hmm.
So and I know there's some myths out there about not eating cruciferous vegetables when the thyroid is slowing down, but let's listen to the opposite of that and you eat your vegetables. Yeah.
Yes.
Again, it's that the vegetable is not the problem. There's something else going on.
Yes. And so making sure that your thyroid is functioning is, really important before you get pregnant. So
Mhm.
making sure you do a full thyroid panel, not just TSH. TSH tells you squat all, in my
Mhm.
opinion. You got to look at your free T3, free T4, total T3, total T4, reverse T3. Like you just got to look at the whole gamut. There's
Mhm.
8 of them that should be looked at.
Yeah,
And if you have been diagnosed with a thyroid condition, you got to make sure that they look at antibodies as well.
yeah,
And there's 2 antibodies that need to be tested. So make sure that you guys are really advocating for the right testing done to make sure that you know what's going on and where your body is to begin with.
yeah,
Because I don't know, I'm sure you can account to this. Pregnancy is really stressful on your body,
mhm, yeah,
and if your body is struggling before you get pregnant, during pregnancy, it's
yeah.
going to be under even more stress.
Oh, absolutely. If you think about our lifestyle, even leading up to the point where we get pregnant, we're on the go. We're the rushing woman most of the time,
Mhm.
right? So if we're already going into the pregnancy with depleted adrenals, the pregnancy itself is going to drain your adrenals. They physically actually expand in size when you're pregnant to compensate for the extra stress that your body is supposed to deal with when you're pregnant. So now you're going into this stage depleted, and then you give birth, and now you're coming out of it depleted, and now you're maybe nursing, and now you have an infant, and now you're tired, not sleeping. So I don't even just look at what's going to happen in pregnancy, but I project out into the future of like, what's this woman's life going to look like once she's given birth? Because ladies, there's a
Yeah,
big tanking of hormones that happens like post pregnancy. So that's what we want to prevent, so that you can actually enjoy the whole process.
right. And some of the other food alterations or switches that I recommend
Mhm.
women do, and men, let's be honest,
Yes, 50
it's
50 here.
yeah, let's reduce alcohol consumption.
Hmm.
And let's decrease our caffeine
Hmm.
consumption. So whether it's in the form of pop or coffee or black teas or even green teas, you want to make sure that while you're going through this process of getting your body all ready,
Hmm.
that you're taking the stress off your liver so that your liver can balance out your hormones. And those are
Absolutely.
a couple of the things that really put excess stress on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are a couple of the other things that I recommend.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's
And
great. And I think what you touched on with the liver is so important. So that Dutch test that we run will actually look at whether you're methylating properly or not, and converting some of these things into another toxic form, or you're going to convert it into something that's water soluble that your body can actually excrete. So that's so important. Those little things that we do on a daily basis make a huge difference.
Well, I don't know that I touched on this or answered this, but
Mhm.
what is methylation?
Yes,
Why do we keep talking about
right.
methylation? What is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, so methylation is basically a process of attaching a methylated compound to something that is already toxic in the body. So your body will receive things from the environment, from the foods we eat. The liver will take it in its 2 different phases. It's going to change it into something toxic or non-toxic. And
Hmm.
in the first phase, it's going to change it something into that's something very toxic. And it's the methylation that will actually convert it over. So we're either going to absorb it, so if it's something that we need, or we're going to excrete it out of the system. How would you explain methylation?
Um, it's one of the processes that our body utilizes along with glutathione in order to create more antioxidants.
Mm-hmm.
So, antioxidants are what our body uses to get rid of free radicals. And
Mm-hmm.
so, just like you said, it's really clearing the system of the harmful toxins or free radicals that are floating around from regular breakdown, like repair and
Yeah.
breakdown, to the food that we're eating. And so that's the simplest way that I think about it. We could get super technical
I
and get
know.
into the biochemistry here, but I
Yeah.
don't know how many people would appreciate that. I
Right.
love that kind of stuff, but
Yeah. In simple terms, it's anti-aging. People
yeah,
love that, right? To hear that, okay, this is going to reverse aging somehow. So we need our methylation process to be working.
there you go. Maybe
Mhm.
that's why I still get double ID'd whenever I go try and
Right.
buy a bottle of wine, organic
Yeah.
wine,
Yeah.
which I
Not a
don't do
bad
anymore.
thing.
Dry farm.
There you
They
go.
just ship it, but I still
Yeah.
have to show ID to sign for it. But hey, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, The other thing that's super important too is water consumption.
Mm,
So making sure that you're hydrated
mm-hmm.
because blood flow to the uterus is super, super important.
Right.
Hydration to create sperm, super,
Yeah.
super important. And so making sure that if you guys listen to episode 14, I believe it was, with Dr. Taylor, she
Mm,
talked about fluoride. You really want to
yeah.
drink non-fluorinated water
Yeah.
because it's a really, really toxic
Yeah.
compound. And so you don't really want to be guzzling down good old tap water if there's tons of fluoride in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And another key nutrient we didn't really touch on is iron. So your iron storage is something that we really want to find out, because when you do get pregnant in our second trimester, the fetus will take it and take it and take it. So if you're going into that depleted, you're going to get even more depleted. And we want to prevent hemorrhaging, and we want to prevent fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
because that will happen. And most women, you may start off with a certain number of ferritin storage, but by the end of the pregnancy, that usually goes down to half, which is normal because of micro dilution that's happening in our blood. So you want to go in with some high stores.
Well, good point. And if you are anemic, you got to find out why you're anemic.
Yes.
So if you're anemic because you have super heavy blood flow, you have very heavy menstrual cycles, that's one thing. But if you don't have very heavy menstrual cycles, where are you losing the blood from that's causing your iron stores to go down? And
Mm-hmm.
men, when I see a man that's iron deficient, I go, oh my goodness, what is going on here? Because
Right.
they don't menstruate. So making sure that you know what the heck is going on, super, super, super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we
So
talk
what
a
are,
lot about, oh,
oh,
sorry,
go
go.
ahead.
I
No,
was
go
going to
ahead.
say we talk a lot about heavy metals, and lead. Having high amounts of lead is something that will block your iron uptake, which will deplete your storage. So again, that's why we run that test.
Well, and heavy metals will affect thyroid function. Mercury loves your thyroid.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about heavy metals.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not really quick, but let's dive into that because we both said that would be something that we would do for about 6 months. What type of, do you normally do heavy metal testing, and how long do you do heavy metal detox?
Oh, yeah. So the testing is usually a urine test where you're doing a like first morning urine, and then you're taking a chelating agent to do a provocative test. So then you're collecting for about 6 hours after to see what kind of metals are stuck in your tissues or in your um, also also in your bones and things. Yeah, so everywhere in your tissues, and we can see
Mm-hmm.
what's coming out. And for detox, I mean, I'm going to say minimum 3 months, like minimum. You want to, that's why we want you to come in either 6 months or a year before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and the nice thing about the challenge test, and don't worry, guys, we're going to do a whole series on heavy metals.
Yeah.
So we're just briefly touching on it in this one, but the reason you want to do a challenge test is to see, okay, where were you at? How much do you have to gauge roughly how long it's going to take? Because it doesn't come out, in a week or even a month. It takes time. And we'll talk about setting up concentration gradients and why it needs to be done appropriately, or you could end up feeling way, way, way worse than you did before you even got it done.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Sonia, you guys do a lot of IV. Do you guys do a lot of IV heavy metal chelation, or what do you guys typically do?
We do with specific metals. So if somebody has high lead, for instance, we will use IV EDTA and use that, but in combination with doing the cell detox. So it's not,
Mm-hmm.
we don't just do one or the other. We'll combine depending on what metals have come up. Because as you know,
Sure.
there's certain chelators that will work, have more affinity for
Mm-hmm.
certain metals. So again, it's individualized depending on what's going on with the patient. And we
And
always,
it's
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, and it's so important that you do both of them and not just the IV chelation because the IV chelation has caused a lot of people to get super, super sick
Yeah,
because it doesn't stay in your system. You got to look at half-lives. And so
absolutely.
when when everything's just circulating, it's going to redistribute. And
Yeah,
we tell people all the time, it's reintoxication. You're just retoxifying yourself. It's
yeah.
just going somewhere else.
Yeah, and it depletes your minerals too. So we always make sure people are on minerals, and we also followed up with a glutathione push to replenish the glutathione in the body because, as you know, high mercury will bind up your selenium, and selenium is needed for glutathione production, which again is our anti-aging
Hmm.
antioxidant. So if you want some of that, you want to make sure we're touching on your metals.
Absolutely. Well, and I love, love, love. I'm going to go back to that SpectraCell test. I think
Hmm.
that is amazing because my problem with a lot of prenatals is they pack them full of crap, like a lot of stuff that we don't actually need. And what we do need, they don't give us a whole lot of.
Yeah.
So,
This way you can target what
yeah,
your body's
and
needing. Hmm.
exactly. And that way you can take the exact dose. So,
Hmm.
what would be a couple of your take homes for women who want to get pregnant? You
Hmm.
know, what are some of the tips that you say,
Yeah.
hey, this is where you really should think, or what you should do, or what you
Yeah.
should research on?
Yeah, yeah. So I think right away you want to get eating organic, right? Changing, doing the things that you have control over in that moment. So eating organic, eating the things that we had just talked about, and get tested. So I would just, spend the time getting tested for hormones, getting tested for the metals, the nutrients. So again, it can be really targeted for what you need to feel healthy. What about
Yeah,
you?
great. Same.
Hmm.
And I really, really, really love the idea of talking to your significant other
Hmm.
about, why are we doing this? What do we want it to look like? Because honestly, I don't think there's ever a perfect time to have a baby. There,
No, no, it never. There never is. When they want to come, they will come, right? There's never really a perfect time. Usually, it's in the most non-perfect time that they show up. But if you have that conversation of your why and why that's important to you, and it's not just about fulfilling society's expectation or family's expectation, but something you want for you, it makes the whole journey worth it. Then,
yeah, that's great. That I think I'm going to start asking people that why,
yeah,
why.
yeah,
And on top of, the testing and um, changing your food out, really being okay with it taking time and giving yourself at least 6 months, like you said,
yeah,
not being in the state of, okay, we decided we're ready for kids. We want them now.
yeah.
Next cycle, we're going to find out that we're pregnant.
Right.
You got to be patient. It
Hmm.
doesn't always happen like that. I know everybody knows somebody who, quote unquote, they're fertile myrtle and they
Right.
had unprotected sex once and got pregnant, and
Right.
but the unreal or the reality is most people that's not what
Right.
it is, especially in this day and age. And so getting tested, making sure that your body's ready to receive that baby is probably the most important thing you could do to set them up for a healthy life, and also to set you up for, like you said, Dr. Sonia, a really good recovery after you do
Mhm.
deliver the baby.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a follow-up podcast to this would be really great to focus on that, the actual pregnancy itself, and then the postpartum period too, and what we can do to support it.
What, you mean the baby doesn't come and everything's good
Everything's
and
bliss. It can be. Depends on your perception. Yeah, and how much sleep you're getting actually.
I'm sure. Well,
Yeah,
and that's just it. Everybody has different pregnancies too, and I've
absolutely.
I've been told by multiple people, each pregnancy that they've had has been totally different as
Hmm.
well. So making sure that you're best preparing your body so that you can be healthy and enjoy
Yeah.
it, and hopefully limit your morning sickness and limit, the frustration behind how long it takes to conceive. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that can be done to try and limit the amount of stress and frustration that could go into
Yeah.
trying to get pregnant.
Yeah. Well, there's so much that's out of our control when we're on that journey, whether it's trying to get pregnant or while we are pregnant. There's a lot going on that we can't control, but there are certain things that we can. And if we just focus on those and then just allow things to fall into the place they're supposed to, it makes it more enjoyable,
Mhm.
right? And we learn through the process about ourselves, our body, and what we really want too.
Right.
Yeah,
We'll have to do a podcast on mine and my husband's journey at some point. I'm sure
absolutely.
I'll be able to connect with a bunch of women who are going through the whole rigmarole of, trying to conceive and
Mhm.
it just not happening, and options and what to do and what have I done, and um, just the whole mental, gymnastics that you got to play
Yeah,
with it.
yeah.
So,
I think that'll be fantastic.
really, 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 guys, make sure that you're okay with taking time to get pregnant.
Yeah,
It's okay.
yeah,
6 months, even a year,
yeah.
isn't going to change that much.
No, and the child is with you forever after. So give yourself those 6 months to really focus on you and what you need.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
like always, guys,
yes.
like us on Facebook, join our closed Facebook group, subscribe to the podcast, download, and please, please, please share.
Hmm.
There's so many women out there that are looking for information, and we're really trying to make it as concise and easy to find. So share this out. And another thing, let us know what you guys want. We're here for
Yeah,
you. Make this
absolutely.
your podcast.
Yeah, please tell us what you need. So thank you. And this was great. Good discussion.
Absolutely. Well, have
Yeah.
a great week, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. See you.
Bye.